Hey guys, Spud here, and today we have the results of the 2024 edition of the DCS World Players survey. And I wanted to thank all of you guys who have participated in the survey and helped contribute to what I believe is the largest repository of information on DCS World Players outside of Eagle Dynamics. If you're a dev or a prospective dev and you'd like an in-depth look at these results in person with me over Discord or Zoom, please don't hesitate to reach out. And let's go ahead and get started here. Alrighty guys, welcome to the results video for the 2024 edition of the DCS World Players survey. Now before we get started here, I wanted to thank all of you guys who took the time to fill out the survey. I know there are a lot of questions and it was rather time consuming. But you guys have added to what I believe is the largest repository of information about DCS World pilots outside of Eagle Dynamics' own internal sales figures and their ability to look at the back end of DCS World Multiplayer. So big thanks to all of you guys for filling it out. So before we get started here, we've got the 2024 edition of the player survey on the right hand side here, the 2023 edition in the middle, and the older 2022 edition on the left-hand side. And we've got some big labels up there at the top of the screen for you guys, so that way you don't get confused as to which one is which as we go through the results today. So our first question was asked between all three of the different surveys, and that is, what is your age range? In 2024, the largest age range of folks, with 22.5% of you guys, are between 30 to 40 years old. The next largest age group is 20.7% of you guys are 40 to 50 years old. The third largest percentage of you guys are between 18 and 24 years old, followed up by 24 to 30-year-olds at 13.4%. And then we've got 50 to 60-year-olds at 12.7%. And the remainder is split between 5.2% of you guys are 60 plus, and a small percentage of you guys are 12 to 14 years old. Of course, we forgot to mention the 18 to 14-year-old section there as well. We can see across all three of the versions of the survey that it is a rather stable percentage. It just kind of skews up and down slightly across the years, and that could be due to a number of factors. Between 2023 and 2024, we can kind of see that the overall average age of DCS World players is slightly going up, and I think that's just a result of it's another year later and people are getting older. The reason why the 2022 survey tends to skew a bit towards the younger crowd, with a large chunk of 18 to 24-year-olds, 24 to 30, and 14 to 18-year-olds, is because this survey was only published on Discord, and Discord users tend to really skew towards the younger side. And the 2023 and 2024 edition were published to all of my socials, so people of all ages and different demographics saw it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Discord, all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and move on to our next one here. This is a new one asked here on the 2024 edition of the survey, and that is the question, are you a guy or a gal? Now you might be wondering, Spud, of course it's going to be, vast majority is going to be male players. But the reason I wanted to ask this question is because of the fact that Heapler, with their new pilot customization system coming for the F4E Phantom II, allows the player to not just customize the pilot's flight suit, oxygen mask, flight gear, helmet, all that stuff, but you can actually change your pilot from a male pilot model to a female pilot model. And I think that this is a really important step towards making DCS World overall a better game. DCS World is, of course, unquestionably a fantastically amazing simulator, but DCS World, in order to grow and keep attracting new customers and keep existing customers engaged, I've always thought needed to develop into a much better game. And some sort of a pilot customization system is something that I've been wanting for quite a long time. And things like the dynamic campaign and other modules or additions to DCS like that will help DCS develop into a much better game. On top of that, I know that we have a number of female as well as transgender folks who do enjoy participating in my missions, and I'm sure you can hear them in the videos, and I just wanted to get an idea of how many out there really enjoyed DCS. So of course, no surprise here, roughly about 98% male, with a small 1.2% female and 1% preferring not to say. So let's move on to the next one here. We've got, do you work in the aviation industry? Whether that's for the military, the airlines, are you a CFI, a CFII, do you work at a flight school, are you a mechanic, aviation mechanic? All that kind of stuff is encompassed in this question here. And we can see it is an incredibly stable number across all 3 years of the survey here, with roughly 84% of you guys, plus or minus a little bit over the years, saying that no, you do not work in the aviation industry, with roughly about 16% of you guys saying, plus or minus a couple of a tenths of a percent there, that no, you do not work in the aviation industry. And I think this just kind of is a great example that goes to show just how engaging and enthralling and gripping the concept of military aviation is, and how people just really find it so interesting and want to dig deep into military aviation. And DCS World gives people the ability to experience something that not many people out there are going to be able to experience throughout their lives. And so I think that that's why so many people just dig so deep into DCS. Next question here. Do you work in the aerospace industry? Another question asked across all 3 years here, whether that be for Boeing, Lockheed, Raytheon, whoever it might be. And it looks like, again, extremely stable across the board here in terms of the percentages. Roughly about 95% of you guys here in 2024, or a little bit less than 94 or 95%, said that no, you do not work in the aerospace industry. And roughly about 5.6 to 6% of you guys said that yes, you do work in the aerospace industry, which is kind of interesting. I've definitely heard some very interesting and high-level conversations about aerodynamics and avionics in mission debriefings after we finish flying a mission, whether that's with the Red Flag group or in my own group or anything like that. And so you guys definitely help elevate the conversation, that's for sure. Next thing we've got is, are you a licensed pilot in real life? And again, the numbers here are incredibly stable over the 3 years. In 2024, 78.2% of you guys said that you were not a licensed pilot in real life, which again, I think goes to speak to, how just interesting military aviation can be and how it really sucks people in, really captures people's imaginations, and how DCS World allows people to experience that world and in a way that is engaging and fun and interesting. One trend that we do have here that is just incredibly interesting and incredibly awesome, and I'm super proud of the community for this, is you can see the percentage of folks who said I'm a student pilot slowly going down, and we can see the percentage of folks who say I am a licensed pilot is slowly going up over the years. So the only conclusion that I can draw from that is you guys are passing your check rides out there, which is absolutely awesome and absolutely fantastic. I hope you guys are all sticking with it and getting additional ratings, your instrument rating, your commercial cert, your multi-engine, your CFI, your CFII, whatever else you might need, and you are continuing on with your aviation career. I know that I have helped a number of folks in my Discord community with figure out how to get their aviation career started. I've also helped folks study for their check rides, and I've definitely helped kind of talk some people off the ledge who are extremely nervous about taking their check ride the next day or something of that nature. So if you ever have any questions, you need help studying, or you just need somebody to kind of help calm those nerves before a check ride, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to help all of you guys out there. Okay. Moving on to more DCS World related questions, which of course is why I'm sure you guys are all here. We have the age-old question, how did you find DCS World? In 2024, 50.6% of you guys found DCS World through YouTube content. 22.6% of you guys found it through word of mouth, be it via friends, family, etc. and 22.3% of you guys found it via internet search. I'm guessing you Googled something to the effect of military flight simulator or combat flight simulator or something like that, and DCS popped up for you. Now, interestingly, a really small percentage of you guys, about 4.5%, found DCS World through an advertisement. This is interesting because I remember quite a number of years ago now, maybe 3 to 5 years ago, Eagle Dynamics did run some YouTube ads, and I remember seeing DCS actually pop up on my ad feed, so maybe that's a remnant of those folks. And we can see that that very small percentage is pretty steady over the years here. The large chunk of you guys that found DCS World through YouTube, I think just goes to show that DCS World really, lives and dies based off of YouTube content. You have, the hype videos for new modules coming out that gets people excited and draws new people in potentially. You have educational videos and tutorials that help inform the community once they're in the cockpit of their jet and they're ready to start learning. You have entertainment videos to keep people engaged in the DCS World community and see new ways to have fun in DCS World. And of course, you have the blooper reels and things like that that people put out that bring a little bit of humor to the community as well. So all super interesting stuff here. And it just shows how important YouTube content is to keeping DCS World alive and well and thriving. Up next, we have the age-old question that was asked only 2 years in a row here. How do you best learn DCS World aircraft, the mission editor, and other DCS World topics? And again, the vast majority of you guys out there said YouTube content. This is a multiple answer question here, so 91.3% of you guys here in 2024 said YouTube content. And again, another huge percentage of you guys said that in 2023 as well, which again just speaks to the fact that DCS World really lives and dies through YouTube content. The next most popular, with 59.6% of you guys saying that you learned how DCS World topics through this method, were community-created manuals. So that's going to be things like Chuck's guides, knee boards, and other kind of publications that people put together that are free to use on, different communities, in Discords, on the official files download for user files on the Eagle Dynamics website, things of that nature. Next up, we have official module manuals, with 44.1% of you guys selecting this choice. This is really interesting to me because this is in third place as well in the 2023 version of the survey, but it jumped up by almost 10 percentage points there, which is really interesting. And I think this is because of the fact that, at least in my opinion, the manuals that come with DCS World modules are getting better and better and better. Baltic Dragon created an absolutely fantastic manual for the F-15E module, and it looks like the Heapler F4E's manual is going to even eclipse the F-15E's manual. It's just getting easier to read, understand, and parse through and find relevant information. So I think that that's why that percentage is going up. In fourth place here, we have forum posts on the ED forums or other. Then followed up by, looks like Discord community discussions. That's kind of a dangerous one. And then next is talking with friends and family. So maybe you know somebody who flew that particular aircraft or worked on that particular aircraft or has some sort of insider knowledge. And of course we have real aircraft publications. This is always down on the bottom, and I think it's because of the fact that, like Air Force Dash 1s and Navy NATOPS manuals, they're not exactly the easiest to parse through and understand and read if you don't have a lot of aviation background and know how aviation manuals for real aircraft are set up and how they're going to read and how to parse through and understand them. So I'm really not surprised by that. All right. Next one is another question that was just asked here in 2023 and 2024. And that is, do you actively read about or consume aviation-related content outside of DCS World? This one is always kind of a mind blower for me, so you guys can give me a fact check in the comment section down below to see if I'm crazy or something. But in 2024, 82.2% of you guys said that yes, you of course consume aviation-related content outside of DCS. But the mind blower for me is always the small percentage of you guys, 17.8%, who say they do not consume aviation-related content outside of the context of DCS. That's a mind blower for me because I am always, like, my entire life is completely taken up by aviation. If I'm not flying in real life, I am flying in DCS making content for you guys, or I am reading the manuals for the jet that I fly for work, or I'm reading the manuals of airplanes that I fly for fun, or I'm reading the manuals of airplanes in DCS World, watching history videos on YouTube about aviation, talking with friends and family about aviation-related topics, and, you know, of course, doing things like this here. So it's always surprising to me that people can shut the interest in aviation off, and maybe I'm just a super geek or a super nerd or something, but I'm sure you guys will let me know down below. All right. Next question, of course, asked across all 3 of the years here, is your DCS World Battle Station setup? Now, this is an interesting one, and I think that there's an inherent kind of flaw in this question, but let's go through the statistics we've got here in front of us. In 2024, 46% of you guys said you had a high-end rig, which is a $2,000 plus budget PC to play DCS World on. And we can see over the years that percentage is definitely marching up. From 42.6% in 2023 to 46% here. Is pretty stable in terms of the mid-tier between 1,000 and 2,000, and we can see a little bit of a dip in the number of folks who have a more of a budget rig between $0 and $1,000 for your PC. So it could very well be here that people are upgrading their PCs to higher specs to get the most out of DCS World they possibly can, but I think a slight issue with this question, and I'll probably have to reconfigure it for next year, is computer parts due to economic forces outside of our control, like inflation, tariffs, things of that nature. PC parts are getting more expensive. So I either have to up what the budget for a high-end rig is, or I have to reevaluate and maybe go for a more spec-based question. But still interesting nonetheless, for sure. Okay. Next question, again asked across all 3 of our years here, is your DCS World controls setup? And we can see a very teeny tiny percent of you guys are still hanging on to that keyboard and mouse, less than 1% of you guys, and I am sure that that is incredibly difficult, and I am not even going to attempt it. A very small percentage of you guys, of course, are using game controllers, 1.5%, so that's going to be Xbox controllers, controllers made by Logitech, etc. Budget sticks, so those are just kind of standalone sticks, a very small percent of you guys at 2.6%. And then the HOTAS low end, that's going to be like the T-Flight 1, I think they call it, from Thrustmaster. You know, things like that that are very cheap. Maybe the X56 HOTAS at 8.4% of you guys. Followed up by the mid-tier guys, $150 to $250 range. That's going to be things like the Logitech X56, which is a bit of a step up from the good old-fashioned X52. The HOTAS mid-tier high-end is, again, potentially going to encompass the X56, as well as older Thrustmaster Warthog systems. And then the high-end here is going to be newer, new build versions of the Thrustmaster HOTAS Warthog, your Verpals, your Wind Wings, all that kind of stuff. And we can see that the percentage of folks in the high-end category here across the years is definitely getting much larger. Big jump in almost 4.5% there between 2023 and 2024. Again, this could be attributed to economic forces, but another thing that is definitely true is the availability of the very high-end HOTAS systems from Verpal, Windwing, and others. There's another one out there that is escaping me. It's similar to Verpal. It's similar to VPC. Anyway, those companies are making shipping to Western Europe, as well as especially to North America, much, much easier, much quicker, and much more hassle-free and, of course, cheaper. So more folks are going to go for those high-end HOTAS systems because it's just easier to get them where they live now. So I think that kind of accounts for that kind of jump. Next up, again, the all-important question, do you fly with rudder pedals? This is a really important one, and it definitely increases your enjoyment of DCS World if you have rudder pedals. In 2024 here, 69.3% of you guys, nice, said that you are flying with rudder pedals for your rudder axis. 21.2% of you guys said that you have a twist stick for a rudder axis, and then rudder axis on your throttle at 9.5%. So that's going to be folks who are using the throttle on the T1600M throttle system, and that is a really, really fantastic solution for folks who maybe don't have the use of their feet. And I've definitely worked with quite a few folks who have physical challenges, who really want to enjoy DCS World, and I always recommend that they get the Thrustmaster T1600M throttle because it has a really nice axis that can be used with your fingertips for rudder control, and it is probably the best way to get a good rudder axis without having actual rudder pedals down by your feet. So that's kind of interesting there, and we can see across the years here, the number of folks with actual rudder pedals is definitely climbing and going up. Next question here, do you fly with head tracking? Again, another one asked through all 3 years here, and the percentage of folks who are using head tracking is going up. It looks like a little bit between 2023 and 2024. And it looks like that percentage is kind of taken up by folks who have bought a head tracking solution. And so they've gone from the no head tracking to having some sort of head tracking system. Interestingly enough, we have the exact same percentage of 30.8% of users using virtual reality headsets between 23 and 24. Personally, my recommendation for folks, if you're just getting into DCS and you don't have much of an aviation background, you don't know much about how airplanes work and things like that, I highly recommend to learn and do a lot of the bulk of your learning with a TrackIR headset on a flat panel screen. And then once you feel more comfortable and you feel like you're starting to get a bit more confident, things are getting easier for you, you're understanding things better, then move over to that VR headset and enjoy the heck of that out of that VR headset. The reason for this is because if you're on a flat panel screen, it's much easier to simply flip back and forth to PDFs of manuals, Alt-Tab out to YouTube for YouTube videos, things of that nature. So that's just a recommendation from me on there. Moving on down, DCS maps that you own. Okay, free maps are not included in this question here. And we can see across the years here that there are more and more options, which is very cool. One thing that kind of surprised me in last year's survey was that the Nevada Test and Training Range had a lot more customers than I thought had originally, which is really interesting. And the Syria and Persian Gulf map in 2023 were almost neck and neck there. We can see here in 2024 that the Syria map has pulled ahead of the Persian Gulf a little bit, which is really not surprising. And the Persian Gulf has fallen back a little bit, but still has a pretty huge majority of people own that map. And the NTTR is still hanging on in there. I'm a little bit surprised that only 49.4% of you guys out there have the Sinai map, because I think that map is absolutely gorgeous and an amazing map. I'm not surprised that South Atlantic is pretty far down still, with only about 33 or 34% of you guys across both years having had that map. The Channel map, the World War II maps are always down at the bottom. So pretty interesting stuff there. The idea of Syria kind of pulling ahead of the Persian Gulf map is not surprising to me. I've worked with a lot of new folks to DCS World who I have seen gravitate towards buying the Syria map before they buy the Persian Gulf map, and I think that that's a good call. The Syria map is definitely a higher quality than the Persian Gulf, but they're both awesome, fantastic maps. Moving on here. Now these are the questions that kind of really are going to influence those mission makers out there as well as, server hosts, things like that. This is the question of favorite map for single player and multiplayer missions. Now, this is going to shift based off of, the new hotness in the map that's out lately. So it could be folks just bought Sinai or they just bought Syria, and of course they want more content for that map. Now, in previous years, I did not put the Caucasus in here, and I only wanted paid maps. But for the 2024 edition, I did go ahead and throw the Caucasus in there, and that accounts for the major skewing compared to 2023. So in 2024, 46.9% of players wanted more content for the Syria map, 20.6% of players want it for the Caucasus map, and 14.8% of players want it for the Persian Gulf map. So that's really interesting, with a small, almost equal slice of 4% and 6.2% wanting it for Sinai and NTTR, respectively. Not surprisingly, Marianas as well as South Atlantic are in a very small minority, kind of tucked in between there. So interesting stuff. That is definitely interesting for folks who are building campaigns out there, hosting servers and whatnot. And this question here is related to the previous question, but it is the actual question of what maps do you want more content for. So I guess kind of a bit of a repeat, but this is your favorite map to play on now, and this is the map that you want more content for in the future. In 2024, we can see that the majority of folks want more content for Syria, followed up by people want more content for Sinai, which is interesting, because that's definitely different from their favorite map right now. And then that's followed up by more folks want more stuff for Persian Gulf, the Caucasus at 11.1%, 12% want more for the South Atlantic map, which I think is interesting that so few people in the study earlier owned the South Atlantic map, but quite a significant percentage want more content for the South Atlantic map. That could be folks potentially wanting more content for the map before they actually purchase the map. So that's kind of an interesting one there. We can see that back in 2022, the Syria map had just come out, so of course that is the map that people really wanted to play on most back then. Okay, moving on down. DCS fixed-wing aircraft that you own. So that is, of course, a very important question to ask here. And, of course, over the years here, the A-18C Hornet has been the king of DCS World. And we can see here in 2024, 83.9% of you guys still own the A-18C Hornet, and I don't think that that is going to change. The A-18 is still the undisputed king of DCS World, with the F-16 closely behind it in second place, with 71.6% of you guys owning the F-16 in 2024. In third place is the F-14B Tomcat, and in third place is the A-10 Warthog with 58.9% of you guys. Fourth place is the F-14A and B Tomcat, and in fifth place is the F-15E Strike Eagle. This is probably my biggest surprise of the survey and survey results, is the fact that the F-15E is in fifth place. I guess I could have, and I was thinking that maybe fewer people were buying the F-15E than I thought, because of the fact that any videos that were made for the F-15E got quite a significantly lower amount of views as compared to videos for the F-16 and the F-18. I thought a lot more people would have been interested in the F-15E because it is a modern aircraft with MFDs and all that. But I do think that it was a mistake for Razbam not to include some sort of AI jester-like backseater to play the role of a backseater for you. And so I think people find it a little off-putting to fly a two-seat aircraft with only one person up front. So my 2 cents there. So let's move on to the next one. Do you fly one fixed-wing aircraft exclusively or almost exclusively? And we can see that this has really changed over the years here. But the F-18C is still pretty exclusive here at 37.1% or 37.0% of you guys say you fly it almost exclusively. Whereas in 2023, 40% of you guys said you fly it almost exclusively or exclusively. And that is down again from 50% of you guys flying it exclusively in 2022. So we can see as more aircraft are released, the percentages of you guys who fly an aircraft exclusively or almost exclusively are definitely changing, which I think is interesting. And I think that for the most part, when the F-15E came out, I think it stole more folks from flying the F-16 and the F-14 than did steal folks from the F-18, even though avionics and system-wise, the F-15E is closest to the F-18. But I think it's really interesting. All right, moving on here. What fixed-wing aircraft do you want more content for moving forward? Whether that be YouTube videos, single-player and multiplayer missions, campaigns, etc. And we can see that in 2024 here, the vast majority of folks wanted more content for the F-15E Strike Eagle, which definitely is not in, doesn't jive well with what I've noticed about YouTube views for the F-15E being depressed as compared to other aircraft in DCS. But I guess it's people wanting more content for the F-15E before they decide to buy it, potentially. In 2024 here, in second place, we have the F-16 at 15.9% of you guys wanting more content for the F-16, so that's good information to note. The F-A-18 is at 14.3%, and the F-14 is in fourth place with 7.7% of folks wanting more content for that aircraft. So this is definitely something interesting to note, and I think it's important for module makers to potentially have a campaign right off the bat ready to go with, a set amount of content for that aircraft as it's released. So that way people will be able to do something with their new airplane if they're not necessarily somebody who's into multiplayer or big, large multiplayer missions. Moving on here to rotary wing aircraft that you own, which I did not have on the 2022 version of the survey. In 2024, of course, the Apache is the largest percentage who own this aircraft at 75.1%. And surprisingly, this surprised me on last year's as well, 64.5% of you guys out there own the UH-1 Huey. We can see also that the number of responses for this question was quite a bit lower than the other questions, with only 2,558 people actually responding to this one compared to the fixed wing question. And I'm surprised that not as many people own the Mi-24. I thought that this helicopter would be more popular. However, it is a bit more difficult, and actually considerably more difficult to fly than the AH-64, the Black Shark, and the Huey. And the Gazelle and HIP down here are kind of more or less equal, with roughly about 35 and 33% of folks owning those two helicopters as well. I'm always looking for more HIP pilots and Huey pilots in my missions because they are our sole transport aircraft, or transport helicopters, I should say. Alright. Do you fly one rotary wing aircraft exclusively or almost exclusively? Of course, this was going to be the Apache, and it's really interesting how stable this percentage is between 2023 and 2024. At 48.5% of folks flying the Apache exclusively in 2023, and 48.1% of folks flying the Apache exclusively in 2024. We can see that the number of folks flying the Huey exclusively has gone up to 22%, and the number of people flying the Black Shark has gone down, as well as the number of people flying the Hind has gone slightly down as well. Interesting stuff. Let's move on to what rotary wing aircraft would you want more content for? And unsurprisingly, this is dominated by the Apache, and it looks like more people are wanting more content for the Huey now in 2024 than were wanting it back in 2023. More people are, or less people are wanting it for the Hind, which is also a little bit surprising, and less people are wanting it for the Black Shark. So it looks like folks who are flying the Black Shark and the Hind kind of wanted more content moved over into the Huey. So let's move on to the age-old question: do you prefer rotary wing or fixed-wing aircraft for DCS World missions and campaigns? And overwhelmingly, 88% of you guys that responded said you prefer fixed wing, and 12% said rotary wing. Now, in last year's results video, there were a lot of comments talking about how, the results are skewed because my community is mostly based off of fixed wing, because I mostly fly fixed wing, and so on and so forth. And I definitely understand that criticism, and it's a super valid criticism in terms of who participated in the survey. But the survey was launched out to a number of different Discords and a number of different Facebook groups, even those who were rotary wing focused. And I think that it is valid, and I would really interested if Eagle Dynamics kind of chimed in on this one, is I think that the vast majority of people out there do enjoy flying fixed wing aircraft over rotary wing aircraft in DCS World. And I think that the reason for that is twofold. Number one, helicopters are really hard to fly, and you do a lot of crashing and a lot of accidentally falling apart in the sky and accidentally hitting trees and things like that. And they're just difficult to fly. They are beasts that are just crazy and vibrate so much that the Earth rejects them. And then secondly, the number of companies out there who provide really nice peripherals for flying with helicopters are quite few in number, and those peripherals themselves for nice collectives and things are quite expensive and are probably out of the budget of the average DCS World pilot. I have seen plenty of folks fly and enjoy flying helicopters with just a good old-fashioned HOTAS throttle set up for a collective, but that is not the ideal solution, and it makes flying the helicopter even harder, in my opinion. So I think that's why we see depressed numbers of folks flying helicopters over fixed-wing aircraft. Alright, next question here. Most anticipated upcoming aircraft in DCS World. Now, the timing of when I've been putting out these surveys is a little bit unfortunate in that it has been hype building season for a particular aircraft that is coming up on the horizon. So in 2023, that was, of course, majorly taken up by the F-15E Strike Eagle, and here in 2024, the F-4E Phantom II has taken up the reins as the most anticipated module at 27.2% of respondents. Something that I find interesting here is a lot of people are really excited for the Eurofighter Typhoon also coming from Heapler. So this is a much closer percentage here of people anticipating the F4 over people who are anticipating the F-15E versus the F4 and Eurofighter in 2023. So that's really interesting. And of course, the rest is taken up with a spectrum of all of the other aircraft that are known to be coming to DCS World, whether in the short term or the long term at this point. It looks like to me the largest percentage outside of the F4 and Eurofighter Typhoon are people anticipating the MiG-29A Fulcrum that was recently announced by Eagle Dynamics at 6.4%, the A-6C Intruder at 6.7%. I am definitely looking forward to the A-6 more than the Eurofighter myself. The MiG-23, which is in question as to whether that will ever be released at this point due to significant controversies. The F-4U Corsair, the Tornado, the Hercules, the Kiowa, and a smattering of others as well. Most anticipated upcoming DCS World terrain and map. In 2024, the kind of results here are pretty split. It's almost like 1/3 of folks are looking forward to the Kola map, 1/3 are looking forward to Afghanistan, and 1/3 are looking forward to Iraq. Now, I'm sure you guys will probably see that I had Kola Peninsula twice on the survey here. This option was deleted quite quickly once I published the survey within a number of minutes. So very few, if no, people actually chose this Kola option. They all chose the top Kola option. And I think that it kind of shows people out there are really kind of disappointed about more desert maps, I guess, or more brown maps. But I think the statistics here show that quite a few people out there are significantly excited for the Afghanistan map and the Iraq map. And I am definitely very excited for both of those maps. And the Kola map will be really interesting to see, and I'm very excited for that one as well, and the possibilities in gameplay on that map. The Afghanistan map, I think, to me is more interesting at the moment compared to Iraq, just due to the fact that the Afghanistan map is going to have such high, beautiful mountains and canyons and things. That'll be a lot of fun to fly in competitive multiplayer, as well as cooperative multiplayer, and there'll be some interesting campaign scenarios that can be come up with on that map as well. Okay, next question is, what is your favorite era depicted in DCS World modules, maps, and content? Now, this question was kind of fleshed out more in 2023 and 2024, but it looks like the vast majority of folks here are still very enthralled with the modern era, which I defined as 1991 plus, so Desert Storm, Balkans, War on Terror, those kind of more modern conflicts with AMRAAMs, Fox 3s, AIM-9Xs, things of that nature. But we can see that it has slightly gone down from 58.5% of folks in 2023, but it's kind of negligible. And it looks like the other options here that we had for late Cold War as well as Vietnam era have stayed very stable at 24%, roughly 24%, and 12 to 13%. And it looks like the slice of the pie that's grown the most is the Second World War. So it's interesting that people are had a little bit of growth there for wanting and are interested in World War II content in DCS. Favorite mission set and role you like to play in multiplayer or single player? Again, this was a question that was kind of fleshed out with more options in 2023 and 24 as opposed to the original survey back in 2022. So in 2024 here, it looks like 30.6% of you guys prefer ground attack, which I define as close air support, battlefield air interdiction, armed recon, or SCAR, things of that nature. Then followed up by 22.3% of you guys said that you really enjoyed deep strike type of missions, so striking those strategic targets behind the enemy lines, so bunkers, airfields, POL storage, things of that nature. This is always kind of my favorite thing to do, is those deep strike missions where we're going after like a big fixed target with lots of SAMs and lots of AAA, and it's a big old strike package, things like that. Followed up here by 17.7% of you guys enjoy flying SEAD, DIAD, Wild Weasel, Iron Hand, however you want to describe it. And then in fourth place, we've got offensive counter-air, so that's going to be defined as like fighter sweep and escort type missions. And then we've got defensive counter-air, so it's going to be cap, intercept, bar cap, things of that nature for the DCA mission sets. And then smattered in there is a couple of other different types of mission sets that you guys enjoy to fly. And I think that this really shows why people really like the multi-role kind of modules that are able to perform close air support and deep strike and SEAD and all these kinds of different things, so that way they can enjoy all that DCS World has to offer without being locked more into a fixed aircraft type that's fixed into only one type of mission set. Obviously, we can see that this definitely changed a lot from 2022, so we're not even going to go over the stats from 2022 for that question. Favorite air-to-ground weapons loadout? Again, another question just asked in 23 and 24. And it looks like here that folks, 25.7% of you guys said that you enjoyed using guided missiles. This was also the majority in 2023, and it definitely surprised me. So I kind of said that this was, AGM-65s, Hellfires, laser-guided rockets, etc., etc. And that is followed up by folks like to use laser-guided bombs. Personally, I think my favorite type of weapon to use in DCS World is laser-guided bombs, because it requires so many steps and so many things that have to go correctly in the correct order in order to have that very satisfying, very accurate explosion on target. It's definitely not a fire and forget weapon, and I think that employing laser-guided bombs is kind of the thing that DCS World does absolutely best, if I had to name one thing. That is followed up, of course, by INS and GPS-guided bombs, so your different flavors of JDAMs and GB6s, things like that. Then followed up by free-fall unguided bombs, so as the F4 comes out, we're going to be dealing with those quite a lot, and there are a lot of very interesting ways to deliver unguided bombs in the F4E that I'm definitely looking forward to. Anti-radiation missiles, so for the SEAD and Iron Hand guys and Wild Weasel guys, so sidearms, harms, shrikes, standard arms, things like that. And then in there we got unguided rockets as well as guided glide bombs in there as well. Okay, moving on down to favorite air-to-air weapons loadout. The vast majority of you guys out there, more than the majority in 2024, said that Fox 3s are your favorite air-to-air weapons loadouts. That is followed up in close second by high off-bore sight Fox 2, so R-73s, AIM-9 X-rays, and in the future probably ASRAMs once the Typhoon comes to DCS World. And then tied with that, of course, is all-aspect Fox 2, so AIM-9 Limas and Mikes, R-60Ms, missiles of that nature that are kind of have an all-aspect engagement ability. Fox 1s are second to last place, which is kind of sad because I definitely enjoy using Fox 1s, and I think that multiplayer engagements with older rear aspect Fox 2s and forward aspect, of course, Fox 1s are usually the most fun, in my opinion. And then rear aspect Fox 2s are in last place, so people are not very fond of the AIM-9 Bravo through the AIM-9 Papa. But they're going to get very well acquainted with those when the F4 comes out, that's for sure. Okay. Another question here that is new to the 2024 survey. Do you prefer flying for the red side or the blue side? By blue side, I said that that was the World War II allies, NATO-aligned countries, Israel, etc. For the red side, of course, that's just the stereotypical red side, the World War II Axis powers, the Soviet Union, Warsaw Pact, and Soviet Union client states, Russia, and Russian allies. And I guess I should have put China on there. But overwhelmingly and unsurprisingly, 88.3% of you guys like to fly as the good guys, and 11.7% of you guys like to fly as the bad guys. Once the MiG-29 and MiG-23 come out, it'll be really interesting to see if this changes at all. I'm sure that it will, but I still think the vast majority of people are going to want to fly on the blue side, especially when they see just how horrific the MiG-29A's cockpit is. Question here across all 3 years again is, do you fly in multiplayer? And we can see that this statistic here is incredibly stable across all 3 years of the survey, which was surprising to me. And it is roughly about 76.5% of you guys out there fly in DCS World Multiplayer, with roughly about 23.5% of you guys do not fly in multiplayer, which I think is slightly skewed for a couple of reasons. Eagle Dynamics tends to say that the vast majority of people out there who fly in DCS World fly in single player. And I think that they say that and we see this statistic on our survey here for a really interesting reason. I think that the people who are taking my survey are folks who are really embedded in the DCS World community. They are really into DCS World. They have a vested interest in DCS World being successful, and they're interested in the product, and they want it to be successful, of course. So those kind of people who are really deep in the DCS community, they're more likely to enjoy multiplayer. Whereas the statistics that Eagle Dynamics is working with on their backend through their sales figures and what they can see on the backend of DCS Multiplayer, things like that, they're seeing everybody who plays DCS World. Whether that is a person who just picked up one module on Steam or just downloaded the free game and popped into single player and said, whoa, this is complicated, this isn't for me, or somebody who just doesn't want to participate in multiplayer. So the Eagle Dynamics is looking at the full picture, whereas I think this survey is more of those people who are really deeply embedded in the DCS World community. So I think that's kind of the difference there, if that makes sense to you guys. Do you prefer single player or multiplayer? This is an interesting one. I would say that lately, personally, I have been preferring multiplayer, and it's been like that for a while. But I think that that is because I really haven't delved much into single player as of late. But the Baltic Dragon's new F-16 campaign, The Gamblers, and being able to take a look at that has really shown me how much better DCS single player has become. And so that is something that's interested me a little bit more lately. But again, this is another statistic that stayed pretty stable over the years. It looks like in 2024, 62.1% of you guys said that you enjoy DCS or you prefer DCS World Multiplayer, and 37.9% of you guys said that you prefer single player. And again, I think that the same reasoning above is why Eagle Dynamics says the vast majority of DCS players are single player, and why we're seeing the vast majority is multiplayer in this survey. So interesting stuff there, and a little bit of a branch off of from what Eagle Dynamics was showing. Let's see here. Do you fly single player exclusively? This is another question that's kind of related back to the previous question, and 22.3% of you guys in 2024 said that you fly single player exclusively, with 77.7% of you guys saying that you do not fly single player exclusively. Okay, moving on. PvP or PvE co-op multiplayer. This is another question that's been asked all 3 years here. And 74.2% of you guys prefer player versus enemy, which is cooperative play, so not player versus player play. And then 25.8% of you guys said that you prefer player versus player matches in multiplayer. I tend to skew towards liking PvE more because player versus player gets a little too gamey and a little too airquakey, where people are kind of exploiting different quirks of airplanes and different quirks of weapons, as opposed to flying their aircraft realistically. If I could figure out a way to enforce flying realistically and using realistic tactics in PvP, then I would probably be a fan of PvP. But at this point, you just can't enforce that on people. Next question is kind of related and is only asked in 2023 and 24 is, do you prefer flying in persistent servers or scripted missions and events? And 41.3% of folks responded with saying they prefer scripted missions and events, and 58.7%, which is the majority of course, said that they prefer persistent servers. Now, I tend to be one of the folks who I like the scripted missions and events better than persistent servers, because I enjoy and find that the best part of DCS World Multiplayer is that coordination between players, is that having a human AIC or AWACS controller, a human ATC, lots of pilots all working together towards a common goal, as opposed to a persistent server where everything's kind of piecemeal. Some people are talking, some people aren't, some people are working together, some people are actively working against their own side, things of that nature. Another question here is, do you enjoy a storyline or role-playing aspect to DCS World Multiplayer servers, missions, and events? And a vast majority of you guys here in 2024 as well as 2023 said that you do enjoy a storyline and role-playing aspect. So that's 83.2% of you guys here in 24. And the small minority of 16.8% of you guys say no. I think that this statistic here is really showing how hungry the majority of DCS World players are for DCS World to evolve from not just being a fantastically brilliant simulator to evolving to also be a really nice and really good game. And by game, I mean having a storyline aspect, having a role-playing aspect, having something that immerses you in the story of the campaign that you're flying in the server that you're flying in, things of that nature. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to come up with the Operation Burning Sands campaign and storyline was because of the fact that I was kind of craving that kind of something more in DCS World that would kind of pull me in. And I think of that I've been able to provide that to my community. I also think that's why folks really enjoy Baltic Dragons and Reflected's campaigns, as well as others that I'm not mentioning, that have a really good storyline and really great characters that really suck you in and give more meaning to all the buttons and switches that we're flipping in the cockpit. Next question here is, do you like casual and fun multiplayer games like Capture the Flag? And I've got to say that I really enjoy flying Capture the Flag as something fun and different to do. And in 2024 here, 48.3% of you guys said no, and by a slim majority, 51.7% of you guys said yes. I personally think that kind of fun, dumb multiplayer games like Capture the Flag is a great way for PvP to happen in DCS World, because it doesn't matter that people aren't flying realistically or exploiting things, because nobody is playing Capture the Flag with fighter jets in real life. And it could be a great way to increase your dogfighting skills, because it's not just head-to-head, fully equal engagements all the time like people tend to practice with when just doing simple dogfights in DCS. But so that's an interesting one. Moving down to the World War II questions. Do you own any World War II modules? And in 2024, the majority of folks who responded to the survey, 52.9%, said they do not own any World War II modules. 47.1% of those who responded said that yes, they do own DCS World War II modules. And we can see over the years here from 22 to 23 to 2024, the majority of, or the percentage of folks who do own World War II modules is going up steadily. So I think that's interesting. I think that maybe people are getting more excited about World War II as we see more trailers that are focusing more on the Pacific theater. Personally, in the way that tactical fighter aircraft actually engaged each other and engaged in combat, I think is more suited for a simulator or a game in the Pacific theater, and specifically the Southwestern Pacific theater, as well as other theaters of war in Europe like the Mediterranean theater, where engagements happened at much lower altitudes and lower speeds, and it wasn't just escorting bombers across Western Europe at massively high altitudes for hours and hours at a time. And I think that's why the IL-2 guys back in the day went with the Eastern Front, because the Eastern Front and its gameplay and the way aircraft engaged each other is more conducive to that better gameplay from what I just described. Because again, on the Eastern Front, like the Mediterranean theater, like the Southwestern Pacific, engagements happened at much lower altitudes and at much lower speeds. Okay, next question is, do you plan to buy any DCS World modules, World War II era modules in the future? And in 2024 here, it looks like 45.8% of you guys said no, I'm not planning on World War II modules in the future. And 54.2% of you guys said yes, I am interested in World War II modules in the future. Again, we're seeing an upward trend in people interested in DCS World War II between 2023 and 2024. 47.3% of you guys were interested, and now 54.2% of you guys are interested. So interesting change there. And we're coming down to the tail end of the questions here. Next one is, do you plan to buy any DCS trainer type aircraft? Example of a trainer type aircraft would be like a T-45 Goshawk. No relation in this question to the free mod that people can download in the future. And no came up with 73.4% of folks who say they would not buy a trainer type aircraft in the future, and only 26.6% of you guys said yes. And that is a percentage that is down from 29.2% who said yes in the 2023 edition of the survey. I would never recommend a prospective third-party developer coming into DCS World to build a training aircraft as their first module, because it's going to have severely depressed sales compared to a full-up combat type of aircraft. So, why build a old T-33 Shooting Star when you can build a F-104 Starfighter? And people are going to be much, much more interested in the F-104 as opposed to a T-33, if that kind of jives and makes sense from the example I gave there. Okay, next question. Do you own the World War II asset pack? And this was a question that was also asked in 2022 as well. And we can see that the number of folks who do own the asset pack is going up. From 23 to 24, you can see 39% versus 40.9% in 2024. That's kind of like a marginal statistical difference, so I would say it's more or less steady between the two. And this 2022 survey here is skewed towards a smaller set of people only in my Discord server. So I'm going to leave that one out from our kind of analysis here. So interesting, but it does look like more people are tending to get the World War II asset pack, but not by a very big amount. Okay. Do you own the DCS Supercarrier module? And in 2024 here, it looks like 76% of you guys out there own the Supercarrier module, where 24% of you guys say no, you do not own the Supercarrier module. And that is super, super steady between 23 and 24. And it's pretty darn close to the kind of skewed original results on the 2022 version of the survey as well. So it looks like roughly about 25% or a quarter of the DCS World community out there does not have the Supercarrier module, and the remainder do. Interesting stuff. Now, this last question here is only asked on the 23 and 24 survey, and that is, what are you looking forward to most? And I had a big slew of options here as to what people were looking forward to the most. In 2024, the winner at 26.3% of you guys is the DCS World Dynamic Campaign, and I would have to say that is the thing that I'm looking forward to the most coming up here. In second place in 2024 is DCS World Engine Improvements, Vulkan API, Spherical Earth, World Map, etc., etc. In third place is DCS Gameplay Improvements, so that's going to be like data cartridge systems, new ATCs, radar techs, new replay system, etc. And in fourth place is new fixed-wing jet aircraft. So that's really interesting here. New rotary wing aircraft is a very small percentage of folks there, so I find that to be really interesting as well. And one trend here between these two questions in 23 and 24 is back in 2023, people said engine improvements, so Vulkan API, multi-threading, etc., were what they were looking forward to the most. And now that we got multi-threading and we got DLSS and things of that nature, that percentage of people looking forward to more engine improvements has gone down by half. Pretty tremendous change there between 23 and 24, and I think that speaks to just how well received these improvements to the core functionality of DCS World are by the community. And I know that I've seen a massive jump in performance once I got things kind of figured out with my new PC here. I know a lot of you guys out there have seen it as well. So that's kind of the end here, guys, in terms of going through all these statistics. I did have another additional question here down there. What module you think needs a refresh? And I let people kind of put in their own answer. And I would say in looking through kind of a cursory look, because people all typed something slightly different, so maybe I'll rephrase this question in the next year. But it looks like people, for the most part, want a redone F5 and a redone NTTR as the two most heavily requested redos of the DCS World community. If you are a prospective third-party module developer, you're a campaign developer, you're already a third-party developer, or you're just more interested, I'm more than happy to go over any of these results of the survey in more depth with you in person over Discord or Zoom or whatever you want to do. Please just shoot me an email, as well as PM me on Discord or at me on Discord, and I'd be more than happy to go through all of this stuff with you in more depth in person. So thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. I hope you guys all enjoy this beautiful game.